You know, every single day, millions of people head to work and face dangers they might not even see. Things like fall hazards, toxic gases, or live electricity. But there's one organization out there with a single, crucial mission to make sure every one of those workers gets home safely. And that organization is OSHA. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and find out what OSHA is all about and how it protects people just like you all across the country.
I mean, this quote right here, it just gets to the absolute heart of why OSHA even exists. It's such a powerful idea, right? That your safety at work, that's a fundamental right. It's not something you should ever have to trade for a paycheck. And really, that's been the agency's guiding principle from the very beginning.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're a welder, a nurse, or you're working in a warehouse. Hidden dangers can be part of the job. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. We're going to really dive into the agency whose entire job is to get rid of those dangers, OSHA.
Okay, so to really understand why OSHA is so critical, we have to take a step back in time. We need to look at what the American workplace was like before it existed. And let me tell you, it was a dangerously different world.
So before 1970, there just wasn't a single national standard for worker safety. It was this confusing patchwork of different state rules, which meant millions of people had almost zero legal protection from hazards on the job. And the result? Preventable accidents and deaths were sadly an everyday thing.
And the impact since then? It's been absolutely staggering. Since OSHA was created, work-related deaths have dropped by more than 65%. And that is not just a statistic, right? That number represents countless lives saved. Families that didn't have to go through a terrible tragedy. It's truly a historic achievement for public health.
So, okay, that was the problem. What was the solution? Well, it was a brand new federal agency, one designed to tackle this crisis head-on.
The big turning point was the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970. It was signed into law by President Nixon, and it actually had support from both sides of the aisle. This major piece of legislation is what created OSHA the very next year. And its mission, well, that was crystal clear from day one. Make American workplaces safer, period. So OSHA is part of the U.S. Department of Labor, and its official mission is, and I'm quoting here, to assure safe and healthful working conditions for working men and women. So how do they do that? Well, they do it by setting and enforcing standards, and also by providing training, education, and assistance. It's a really comprehensive way of looking at safety.
Okay, that all sounds great in theory, but how does it actually work in the real world, right? I mean, how does a government agency in DC protect a worker on a construction site in Texas or in a factory in Ohio? Let's break down their playbook.
So, yeah, how does OSHA make sure you're safe on the job? How does that mission turn into a real strategy?
Well, their approach is pretty methodical, and it has a few key parts that are really the core of their whole operation. First, they create the actual safety standards, the rules for everything from chemical exposure to electrical work. Then, they conduct inspections to make sure those rules are being followed. And if a workplace isn't playing by the rules, well, that's when OSHA issues citations and fines. But it's not all about enforcement. A huge part of their job is providing crucial training and, maybe most importantly, protecting your rights as a worker.
And that last part, about your rights, is so important. You are legally protected to do things like report an injury, ask for safety data sheets on hazardous materials, file a confidential complaint directly with OSHA, or even just raise a safety concern with your boss. And you can do all of that without the fear of retaliation.
What that means is your employer absolutely cannot legally fire you, cut your pay, demote you, or try to intimidate you just for speaking up about safety. This is often called whistleblower protection, and it's really the backbone of the entire system. It's what empowers workers to actually say something and help keep everyone on the job site safe.
All right, so we've covered the what and the how. Now let's talk about the where, because the scope of OSHA's work is, well, it's massive. It covers pretty much every corner of the American economy.
I mean, think about it. From construction sites to farms, from oil rigs all the way to hospitals, OSHA standards apply. The agency's reach is just huge, protecting millions of workers across so many different jobs. And each one of those jobs has its own unique set of dangers.
Let's take a really clear, real-world example. OSHA has a rule, a standard, for fall protection. It requires things like guardrails or safety harnesses. That one simple rule prevents thousands of fatal falls in the construction industry every single year. And that's it, right there. That's a regulation on a piece of paper becoming a life saved on a job site.
Okay, let's bring this all home. What are the key things you really need to remember from all this? And more importantly, why does OSHA matter to you personally?
Look, if you remember just one thing, let it be this.
OSHA's whole purpose boils down to protecting people, preventing injuries and deaths, and enforcing that fundamental right to a safe workplace. It's designed to be a proactive shield, not just something that shows up after a tragedy has already happened.
At the end of the day, OSHA exists for one reason and one reason only: to protect your life on the job. Behind every single rule, every inspection, and every standard is that simple, powerful goal of making sure you get to go home at the end of the day safe and sound.
You know, understanding your rights and the protections you have is really the first step to having a safer career. So if you want to learn more about OSHA, about workplace safety, and find out how to better protect yourself on the job, you should definitely subscribe to HSE Study.
Our mission is simple. We want to help you stay safe, stay informed, and stay alive. Thanks so much for tuning in.